Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast, and you are listening. Oh, wait, what am I screwing this up already? Let me start again. Oh, fuck. Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez, and you are listening to episode number 631. I know that only because I think I edited yesterday 630. So there you go. 631. Again, my name is Eric Hernandez, here along with
Doug.
Hey, he's on the intro. Check it out.
Look at me, I'm doing stuff.
There you go. On this episode, we're gonna talk about some deep shit at the very beginning. We
Oh yeah.
we talk a little bit about Thanksgiving and what the holiday could mean to some people, and also what it doesn't mean to some people. So there's no right or wrong way to go about this, but suffice to say that, look, day to day, good or bad, whatever you do for work, whatever you do for a living, you can have some good days, you're going to have some bad days. It's okay to have either one. Enjoy your good days, struggle through your bad days, but remember, like, they're both there for a reason. So I'll just leave it at that. Doug and I share some of our thoughts, some of our opinions, and we take a little detour into unexpected territory. But that's what this show is. We'll get into certain topics that are not expected, but we try to share our honest feelings and thoughts, and we go from there. And whether you agree with us or don't, you let us know. So from there, I found a nice little segue through nostalgia to pull out and get into the Marvel news recently of Marvel Studios. I'd like to mention real quick. The actor strike has come to an end. Thankfully, the guild for the actors and the studios have come to a tentative agreement, which has to be voted on. But as of now, that means actors can go back to their jobs. So that's a great thing for everybody. Hopefully we'll get back to enjoying shows, and your favorite series or movie might be back on track. But we talk about Marvel movies and the recent news that's been going on with them and all the different problems they've been having and how they're trying to possibly correct it. Now, mind you, a lot of the stuff that we talk about in the show is all hearsay and conjecture. Like, there's just different opinions from different news outlets, and everybody's saying that, oh, Marvel's doing this, so they should do that, or they're, are sinking ship. Whatever the case is, we cover a lot of information. We share our thoughts, our opinions, and we go from there. If you agree, great. If you don't, let us know why and what you think. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us, I would say, under the podcast section, but as of last episode, I mentioned that the podcast link is not currently working on Inside Pulse. Don't know what's going on, but you can still find us under comics, games, celebrities, TV, wrestling, and movies. Check out any of those sections on Inside Pulse. We're there. We are also brought to you by Rabblecast.libsyn.com over at Libsyn, where you can always find the show where it's uploaded particularly. Check out on YouTube, youtube.com/Rabblecast, or I think at Rabblecast. I think that's how it's addressed there. We'll find out if I'm right or not. I'll check it after the show. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast, because I'm still calling it Twitter. X is silly.
The only people who call it X are feds.
There you go. Check out the Rabblecast Facebook fan page. And of course, I kept saying, share your thoughts and opinions with us. Rabblecast@gmail.com. If you want us, let us know your thoughts and opinions. Great. Try to be constructive, because if you're going to say, you're stupid, I'm not going to read it. It's very simple. If you're going to be combative in an email, nah. I have better things to do. Trust me. Again, listen to this episode. I think that's about it. And again,
Right.
Last episode I did a call to action for anybody who's listening to this. If this audio is currently reaching your ears, rate, review, leave a comment, share the show. If you enjoy it, chances are some of your friends are going to enjoy it as well. So we just want to try to reach as many people as we can, invite many more people into the conversation so we can all have fun discussing what's going on. Simple enough, right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
There we go. With all that said, is there anything you want to add, sir?
No.
Fair enough. Let's get into it. Enjoy
Okay.
the show.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point when I try to troubleshoot one issue, I'll solve that issue, not entirely, but then something else pops up.
That's the story of life, man.
I thought I had everything going, and then all of a sudden the headphones decides to act up a little bit. So I'm only getting you on one side right now, but if I'm looking at the levels, you look fine. So we should be all set.
Yeah, you sound fine to me. You sound like you. So yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
All right, so long as it's not carrying through all the way, I think we should be fine.
Hmm.
Don't mind me. I'm playing with the sound channel real quick. You know what? Let me switch real quick.
Okay.
All right, let's see if that works.
Okay.
Kinda.
Are you still recording?
I am. Yes.
Okay. All right.
This might make the final edit. It might not. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. People don't like it. They can go listen to the other 987,000 podcasts being made at any moment in time.
Exactly. See, there's options. So
Yeah.
not everybody has to complain. If it's not your thing, move along.
Hmm.
If it is, then stick around, because sometimes we have some fun times, sometimes we have some interesting times, other times, what the fuck.
We're not here for a long time. We're here for a good time, or whatever.
Uh,
Whatever the kids say nowadays.
we're all here because we're not all there. How's that?
Close enough. Why not? Fuck it. All right.
So let me ask you a question real quick.
Okay.
We have just I can never tell if it's entering or leaving daylight savings time, where we turn the clocks back an hour in the hopes of saving an extra hour of daylight. How much does that screw with you? Has it affected you at all?
Um, Not really. Um, to be honest with you, I'd be fine driving to work in the dark, and I'd rather be driving home with a little bit of light left. Um, I mean, all things considered, like that, it doesn't really. I know a lot of people it really fucks them up, but for me, it's more of a question of it's like, I don't give a shit. I don't know. I just keep on humping away, and I keep everything so closed up anyway that it doesn't really. Yeah, nothing really feels like it exists anyway. Like I keep in my place, I keep all the curtains drawn, blinds drawn, everything like that, so I can't see shit.
Okay, fair enough. No,
Hmm.
the reason I ask is when I was younger, it really didn't bother me. Like the whole shorter days in the fall and the winter, and then longer days in spring and summer, really didn't bother me a whole of a lot. But in recent years, I'd say probably like the last 10 years, maybe, is
Uh,
really what I've been noticing it more and more. And now it's like, it, I know we have friends who have seasonal depression because of
yes.
the longer nights. I think you and I have talked about it between us, especially um, how the longer nights can affect you a little bit depending on what your situation is. But the other day, like I came back from work and I went outside to grab something. As I'm walking down the driveway, I'm thinking to myself, man, it's fucking dark real fast. Oh, yeah, we
Yeah.
had to do the whole daylight saving thing. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a night owl, so I'm usually awake when that transition happens. Because once it hits 2 o'clock, that's when you're supposed to hit, turn the clock back 2 o'clock in the morning. So once it hits two
Hmm.
o'clock, it's 1 o'clock in the morning all over again.
Yeah.
And I'm usually up around that time anyway. So for me, it really doesn't
Okay.
affect me because by that point when I go to bed, I'm like, oh, I'm not gaining anything, I'm not losing anything. I'm still up during that time. I mean, yes, technically you're gaining the hour in this case, as opposed to losing it in the springtime. But still, it just seems weird to me because it's always been a point of contention where everybody says we should do away with it, we should hold on to it. It's such an outdated idea and model, whatever the case is, because it was intended for farmers, correct?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. I knew once, but I can't remember.
Because I believe it was Benjamin Franklin who came up with the idea of daylight savings. But I don't think it
Well,
was specifically for farmers, but it was to, or for laborers for that matter, if it was the idea of trying to save daylight so you can get more production done during the day. So, I don't know. Well
oh,
yeah.
hold on. Here we go.
Uh-oh.
Daylight savings time was first introduced in Germany in 1916 during World War One as an energy saving measure.
Oh, okay. It's a German idea.
Yes. So then, I mean, that kind of makes sense in its own odd way. So, yeah. I found an article specifically saying no, Ben Franklin did not have anything to do with it.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah.
TV and movies
Apparently, a
have
lot of
lied to
people
me.
have that. What's that?
TV and movies have lied to me.
Apparently so, man. Yeah.
All right, well, there you go. You just debunked me in the beginning of the show. Fuck.
I didn't debunk you. Wikipedia debunked you.
It's all downhill from here, folks.
Yeah,
Oh, wait.
what are you gonna? What the fuck? Yeah.
You went from Wikipedia? I don't trust the source.
Yeah, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, exactly. It's community updated. You never know what you're going to get, whatever the case. I go to Wikipedia all the time. Everything that I've used it for, it's not life or death critical information, so I'm fine. And I'll go along with the idea that it was a German invention or an idea to save energy. That sounds plausible. So, no, but it's just one of those things because like we just had Halloween and everybody was going out and having a good time. Now we're getting into the swing of the holidays, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's time to put away the decorations for all the scary stuff and put out all the decorations for Christmas." Like, whoa, 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 slow the fuck down. What about the turkey?
What about turkey?
Damn, when you put it that way, fucking sounds so
let's
direct.
put it this way: if Halloween and Christmas are Germany and Russia, that by default makes Thanksgiving motherfucking Poland. They're all just waiting to be invaded. Just a question of which side it's coming from.
Good point.
Yeah, I like to think of it that way. Because let's be honest, Thanksgiving sucks.
I mean, see, I have to look at it through the lens of my oldest son because he's learning the idea of Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims and the Native Americans, and it's the idea of sharing and getting together. Never mind the smallpox. Never mind we drove them off their land.
I was going to say, have some infected blankets, and now we're going to murder you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean the idea of Thanksgiving. I like the idea behind it, especially leading up to the holidays. Being thankful for something, being thankful for everything that you have in your life, and being humble in a sense, because sometimes people just get lost in the idea of the rat race from day to day. So taking a moment, whether it's getting together with friends or family, or if they're your extended family, because let's face it, sometimes family can suck. Whatever the case is, being able to have a good time, sit down, even if you get to, have what was it, like Friendsgiving, I think people called it for a while. Just friends get together, not necessarily on Thanksgiving, but around that time, just so you would have an excuse for a get together. I always enjoyed that one. It always seemed like a fun idea to be able to set aside time for friends, because people will say, I love you like a brother. And in that case, yeah, it's like a little get together for extended family. Again, as we get older, people have their jobs, people have their lives. We grow apart in certain respects, and we don't always have a time to get together. If I would sit down and have a table with like all the friends that I really considered close, I would like to think I have a pretty large table to set, or a pretty large room I have to prepare for this in my mind, kind of thing. So, because there's just a lot of people you want to get together with or talk to you haven't seen in a while, possibly. Other people just like maybe just 2 or 3. I don't know. I get to thinking right now, especially with everything going on in my life. Some of the changes are probably going to be happening real soon. Some of the different things that have gone down recently. If you've heard my recent episodes, when I talk about the situation at work, it makes you want to take inventory of the things that you have in life and the things that bring you joy. And again, makes you thankful for. And I also always flash back to WWF Survivor Series when they did little vignettes and everybody's saying what they're thankful for, and they're going through all the different pot shots of different superstars. And I just remember Roddy Piper coming out and he goes, "I'm just thankful I'm not Ricky Rude."
I was just about to say that one because I love that one.
That's the one that stands out the most. And it's silly stuff like that. That, you know, okay, sure, why not? But I don't know. I guess I'm just getting a little nostalgic around this time of the year, and especially, you know, getting older and having kids. It just, you look back at certain things and you wonder, you know, what you did, what was going on, and everything else. My oldest earlier today decided he wanted to ask me, "Hey, Dad, how do you get a YouTube channel?" I'm like, oh fuck, here we go. And I'm like, oh, you know, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, well, we got some time before that. I'm not sure what the regulations are. I think I heard recently on Twitch, you have to be like a certain age if you want to have your own Twitch channel. But if you want to be on your parents' channel, they have to be active with you on the channel, kind of thing. I don't think YouTube has as many restrictions. So, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, this could be a good or bad thing. I'm not jumping into it. We'll have to wait and see. But at the same time, you know, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, remember when he was small and didn't ask for a YouTube channel? Everything was fine. Everything was great. But no, we have to wait and see. So, I don't know. My situation is different than yours. What about you? For Thanksgiving, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
I take issue with the point of the holiday, and how it's kind of been misrepresented over the years.
Are you standing up for the turkeys?
What's that?
Are you standing up for the turkeys?
No, I stand up for nothing.
Oh, okay.
I mean, all that being said, I mean, it's still a day off, and my father, who is going to be turning 76 in the spring, he said, he was like, I could give a shit about Christmas, but just come have just come have dinner with me and my wife. And I'm like, you know what? I can't deny him that. So yeah, I go there, and I usually prefer it when they do steaks instead of turkey. But hey, you know, I'll work with what they got.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah, I kind of use this as an excuse, like, okay, I'm not working. A bunch of people I know are not working. Okay, who can I go catch up with? So usually I end up hitting like 2 or 3 houses, and I'm remarkably uninterested in the food. And for me, it's more of a question of, it's like I could give a fuck about your turkey. I'm here to see you, and like let's catch up for a few minutes in a little while, and just see what's going on. I'm a friend of mine who lives up in northern PA. He spent years driving himself nuts. He would plan this big fucking clusterfuck of the thing where it would be, he actually he lives next door to a I don't know what it was originally, but it got converted into a bingo hall by a volunteer fire company, so they use it for different functions and rent it out. He would use their basements, which had was just basically a kitchen and a whole bunch of like chairs and tables, and basically put out this massive spread. And he would have anywhere from 30 to 50 people pass through. And his entire theory was, I don't want anybody just, not doing anything that day. It's like, come here, eat, and just hang out if you want. Which I appreciate, but he would also spend 2 days just doing nothing but cooking. He would ask other people to make the sides and all that, but he would make 3 or 4 turkeys.
Okay.
I mean, he was even nutty enough where he would even invite his fucking ex-wife and her new boyfriend, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? Just take it easy. Take it easy, pal. So I watched him drive himself nuts, and it's just I mean, he had a couple of blow-ups with family members, but he's got full-on screaming matches. And I was like, if you're driving yourself nuts, why the fuck are you doing this? Just fucking relax, man. Just roll with it, dude. It's okay. I don't get it anymore. Sorry, I'm sidebarring. I'm tired. It's been a bad week and a bad month and a bad day and a bad fucking 4 fucking years right now. So I'm in a bit of a mood.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm like I said, I do that and I go visit people, but other than that, it's just like I said, like I'll always take a day off, but I could give a shit about the fucking holiday itself. Am I going to be thankful? No, I'm not going to be thankful. I'm not going to reflect on any of my good fortunes. I'm going to hyperfixate on all the bad shit that's ever happened because that's how I operate.
Okay, that's one way to go about it.
I never said I was healthy.
Okay.
No, I'll talk about it on here because I could give a shit at this point. But for about 2 months now, I've been talking to a therapist because I got some stuff that's been fucking me up more than usual. And one of the things she was trying to work on with me, it's like you need to kind of, you need to figure out how to take like negative thoughts and like reframe them and not so much spin them, but like reframe them into something positive.
Yeah.
And I realized I was like, sometimes I think I really do like being miserable. So I don't fucking know anymore. Yeah, because even sometimes like I feel like that at least I understand like being in that state.
There's something to be said for being able to wallow in your grief, in your misery, and just thoughts of anger or frustration. You can definitely feel those. That's nobody's saying you can't. But I know in my situation right now, currently, sometimes when I'll leave work, I just be just aggravated to holy hell, and I'm just rather than sit there and use that, or I should say, rather than just sit in my anger and frustration about everything that's going on, I try to use that to my advantage because now I know I'm motivated by the anger. I'm like, let me use that for something. I remember one day I came home, I think it was a Friday. I don't remember specifically what happened at the lab, but I was just pissed off. I came home and I said, fuck it. Rather than just being pissed off the entire time, I was listening to loud music. I think I was listening to the Crow soundtrack on very loud as I drove home. There's something to be said for Henry Rollins' rendition of Ghost Rider when it just pumped up to the max.
Mm-hmm.
I came home and I literally just took apart everything on our stove and I just, cleaned, degreased, wiped everything down, took all the fixtures off, took the little the plates, the little, I don't know what you call them, the little burner plates that are there and the little standoffs that are on them. I took everything off.
Yeah.
I soaked them in, water and dish soap, and I was using vinegar and baking soda. And I went nuts and just cleaned everything until it was sparkling.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of it, Jen goes, okay, I don't think I've seen it that clean since we moved in. I was like, probably not, because I'm trying to do something productive with my energy at this point. Because if I'm going to be that annoyed and that pissed off on a regular basis, and it's out of my control, like there's only so much that I can say or do at work before it just becomes a moot point, and just it's a repeating pattern. So rather than just allow myself to get pissed off all the time and try not to take it out on the family, because that's never a healthy thing, I have to try to do something with it. So I figured that was going to be the case. So there'd be times I come home and like immediately start grabbing all the laundry, cleaning up, or use the vacuum cleaner or fix the vacuum cleaner if something's wrong with it. Whatever the case, I'm trying to be productive with it. But there's something to be said, like I said, to sitting in that emotion for a while. Because nobody's saying you can't feel it or you shouldn't feel it. If it goes for too long, then, that's when people believe that it internalizes and it becomes different things because the cortisone levels in your body starts to shift, and then that starts affecting your hormones, and the hormones start doing different things, and you could trigger something else. Because let's face it, we're all just walking, talking chemistry sets. And if you throw one thing off, something else will fucking trigger whatever the case is. And I'm not saying it's like you're going to work yourself to death in that case. I mean, yes, there are extreme cases of that, but it does you no good to do that all the time. So I know you had mentioned the therapy thing off microphone, I believe, previous to tonight. So I mean, they're not wrong in a sense, but at the same time, it's like if you're going to be pissed, be pissed. Just realize it's you can't stay there all the time. Because at that
No,
point,
no, you're right. You can't stay there all the time, and also, if you know what you're angry about, and you can use it as a motivator, it can. If you want to hook your wagon up to it, it can take you where you need to go. But you also got to keep it on a short leash, because if you just let it out of control, it's no good. It doesn't help you in the long run, and it fucks you up. No, I often tell people don't do what I do. Like what I do is terribly unhealthy, and it probably shortened my lifespan with like just the amount of times I'm just sitting there like so wavering between so pissed off I could feel like every muscle in my body tense up, or just being so kind of despondent and sad that I just feel like sick to my stomach. Those probably aren't good for you in the long run, like you said, with the cortisone levels or cortisol levels, I think it is.
cortisone.
Yeah. So, well, then what's cortisol? Oh, that's the shit they shoot into you, like if your knee's fucked up, right?
Actually, now you got me thinking. You're right.
Okay.
There is one
Sorry,
that
yeah.
I believe you're right.
Go ahead.
I believe it's cortisol in you, and cortisone is what they inject into you if you're having like problems with extreme pain.
Okay.
But but yeah, no. I mean, so let me ask you a question. If you want to answer it, feel free. If not, we can move on. Can you give me an example of something that you've done using your anger, at least the energy of your anger?
Yeah. Yeah. Kettlebells.
Okay, see that's hell. I've done that too. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's something to be said when you have that pent up energy, especially when it's frustrated energy, and then you just release it in a physical manner, especially when you're working out. Oh yeah, that's a great way to do it, especially if you put on some music and just bust out a workout. It's fucking fantastic.
Oh man, like yeah. If you're kind of dragging through the day and you're just tired and you feel just kind of out of it, yeah. If you get yourself a little bit pissed off and you fucking just hit some pissed off, warmed up a little bit, and you start hitting the weights, yeah, it's good for you. It burns off some of the physical aspects, or the negative physical aspects of the stress and the anger. It definitely helps you sleep. It's as good as melatonin or or sleeping pills. It's good to kind of like, honestly, like I swear by, you know, as long as I can lift my arms, I'm going to be lifting weights. Just because it's one of those things where the benefits I get from it are just so damn high. So
Yeah, and I have to imagine that balances out in some shape or form for you.
hmm
So,
I think it helps. Yeah.
oh, absolutely. Because after that, you're you're kind of like quelling the. I'm trying to think of what analogy I want to use. You can go many different ways with this one. You're kind of like pretty much you're taming the beast. You're fighting whatever
Yeah.
inside you and just telling it to shut up for a little while. And for a bit, it'll help. Absolutely. But then when something else pops up, you're just like, well, fuck it, and this and that, whatever the case is. And yeah, like we've talked about this on microphone and off microphone, just the different things in life, the
hmm
overall day to day, the frustrations, the human condition, everything else. It's fucking frustrating, and there's a reason why we escape into music, TV, movies, video games, or whatever else that you can find you can entertain yourself with, because we need it. We need to fucking forget that there's all the other bullshit out there.
Oh yeah.
I'm a firm believer in when I say we, but as far as the human race, when they decided to institute all these different ideas, oh, we need to earn a living, so we have to work, and we should have a structure to it, and there's 9 to 5, and you work 40 hours a week, and here are your wages. Oh, that's bullshit. And I'm not saying that because I'm having difficulty right now as far as work is concerned. I'm saying that in general, even if I were making tons of money, I would still be saying, why? It seems so stupid.
hmm
Like we've worked ourselves into this construct that we have to earn to buy the things that we need to live and enjoy our lives. But we're so limited by a degree or a certification or, who you know, not what you know, and all that. I still think of, like, if we didn't have all the craziness as far as having to work for a living, like, how many people out there are actual, like, genius level types that could be making a difference in the world if they weren't bogged down with day-to-day life. Like, the
That's
amount
a
of...
question that can never be answered.
Exactly. I pose it as just as a rhetorical what if. But it's like, how many more advancements could we have if we weren't limited by how much is in your bank account, or how much is this going to cost, or who's going to foot the bill, whatever the case is. Like, all that stuff is just nonsense and aggravating. But this is what we've accepted. This is what's been done. It's not going to be undone for quite some time. Everybody talks about universal basic income and the machines taking over, and we're not going to have our jobs. Like, yeah, you're going to have people who are going to still contribute and work and do what they have to build a better world for tomorrow. And yes, you're going to have your freeloaders who are just going to sit around and do nothing all day. Those are two, ends of the spectrum. And then you'll have your people in between, whatever the case is. And we're by no means, I'm not trying to say I'm trying to solve the working problem of 9 to 5 day to day and everything else like that. But just the amount of BS that people have to go through. How many friends are on social media that say, oh, work has cut my hours, or work really isn't panning out for me, and I'm really struggling right now, or I used up all my sick days and I can't take a day off, otherwise I take a hit to my paycheck. Bullshit like that just aggravates the fucking hell out of me. And I wish there was something that I could do. It was always like the one, what if of, if I win the lottery, who can I help? Who would I be able to make their lives a little bit easier? A good example, and it's because what I talked about recently, one of the two production managers that was recently let go from our place.
Mm-hmm.
You have one guy who's of retirement age. Like, he should not be working, but he kind of needs to, because he needs to have a steady income.
Yeah.
Whatever his, situation is in retirement, I don't know financially, but here's a guy who used to have his own shop. He was doing well. COVID hit and everything else, and he eventually had to close shop down because things got slow. And I'm sure he had enough money to live to a certain extent, but at the same time, everybody wants a little bit more. Everybody wants to be able to get the things that you need day to day and survive, whatever the case is, essentials. He's having a rough time now because he's a retiree and he's looking for jobs that are like a shop manager. Nobody out there is going to want to hire a shop manager who's a retiree.
Nope.
Because you have certain ideas of what a retiree is at that age and what could they contribute to a company. This guy is actually, for his age, like, you would not tell that he's a retiree. I mean, he's got the gray hair and, he's older, but the amount of knowledge and skill and know-how when it comes to machining, I was like, man, like, I looked at him and was like, have you considered reopening your shop? He goes, nah, that takes a lot of money and time to set up again, and I'm just looking for something that I can just jump into. I'm like, all right, fair enough. But I really wish this guy would, like, be able to just open up shop again, because it just sounds like he can just get the equipment he needs, hire a few people that he knows, or at least people that he can train, and then go from there. And he'll be set. Like, he'll be back on track to do what he wants to do and live the life that he wants. It's like, in the what if scenario, if you had FU money, help the guy out, set something up, put him in a shop of his own, and say, here you go, just run the shop as you see fit, and we'll try to make a profit, and hopefully everybody gets paid, and we'll see if we can make this work. And then the other guy that I was working with for less than a week, in those short few days, we got to know each other pretty quickly, and it was kind of like commiserating with all the nonsense that was going on over there. But come to find out, his wife has a medical illness, and I know a few people. I'm not going to say what it is, out of respect for him, but my heart went out for him, and I was like, man, like, The only reason he took the job was because his wife was not well, and he needs to provide. He needs to help out. He needs to do what he has to do.
Hmm.
Otherwise, he could just sit back, relax, and do whatever. But I was like, man, I wish that there was something that I can do for that guy. And that's just, the story over and over again for me. Is whenever I see friends that are suffering from something, when are suffering in certain cases, or if their job's not doing well, or if relationships aren't working out, it's like, man, I what can I do to help them? But at the same time, it's just like being pulled in so many different directions all at the same time. It's like there's only so much you could do if you could help all of them. So
Yeah, effectively. Yeah, there's the urge to help as many people as possible, especially people you care for, must be tempered with the fact that if you overextend yourself and burn yourself out and fuck yourself up, you're no good to anyone at that point.
exactly. And it's something that I have to remind myself very often, because when I do reach out in certain cases, I'm thinking to myself, like, can I actually help this person, or am I just going to give them an empty promise and then make things worse?
Hmm.
So it's stuff like
Yeah.
that. Because it's whenever somebody goes through a rough time and you're always like, oh, dude, if you need anything, give me a call, or, send me a text or hit me up, whatever the case is. When I say it, I mean it. Like, if somebody needs me, I will drop just about everything and help out as best I can. But yeah, there are certain cases where you're just like, it's just not possible, and it's
Yeah.
frustrating. So, how do you help them and then hurt yourself in the same time? So, I guess that's where my idea of this holiday coming up that's gets me thinking sometimes, because I do wish that I could see more of our friends. I do wish I can catch up with more people and to be able to, just essentially get to a point in time like back in the old days of the coffee house. I know you weren't around for the coffee house days, that
Hmm.
our groups of friends would frequent. Jimmy, myself, Holly, like a bunch of different people were able to go and enjoy that venue, and a lot of friendships were made, a lot of relationships started, and it was a specific time in life, and it was easier then to meet up with different people. But now, being so far apart, it's just like, oh, fuck, I miss those times. I miss the diner runs that you, Jimmy, and I would do after the show.
Hmm. Yeah.
The silly stuff and things like that. But again, life moves on. Life, takes a hold in certain cases and just pulls you in different directions. So it's not always going to be the same thing. You always get a little, and I guess it's nostalgia. Let's face it. Everybody comes down with a case of it every now and then, where you just
Oh
keep
yeah.
looking back and you're just like, fuck, I wish I can go back to that. And I know in your case in particular, especially too, after making certain changes and certain decisions for certain circumstances, you're just like, fuck, man, I wish I could go back to a simpler time, or an easier time, or a time that I was more comfortable with. So,
And you fight with those, it's okay to reminisce and look back upon the past and smile and think about it, but also you have to, you can't let it dictate you,
exactly.
because that's something I'm constantly running afoul of. All I can think about sometimes is, and I'll get into that line of thinking where it's like, I wish with all my heart and soul that it was, a different time. And it just doesn't work. It's just, you just make yourself as unhappy as possible, and you just fuck yourself up. So yeah, it's no good. I mean, it's very tempting a lot of the time. It's a lot easier, and there have been times where I've just kind of looked around where I am now, and said to myself, no matter what, things are going very well. Like, if I look at them objectively, but yeah, I still say, well, why the hell am I so damn miserable? And that's when you realize it's like, okay, something's not working right here, and that's part of the problem, I think, sometimes.
Gotcha.
Hmm. No, bring the show down.
uh, is this the point where we start singing the Cheers theme song?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What the fuck? Why not?
There you go. No, it's, yeah. I mean, you're right. Like, you can sit there and want to change the hands of time. Turn back the hands of time, but it does you no good. Unfortunately, time
Hmm.
keeps moving forward. Um, that's where social media sometimes is a kick in the balls, because you'll be going along and having a good time, and if you post something up on social media some time ago, that day arrives and like, hey, remember this day in like 5 years ago? And you're like, fuck you. Facebook has a very good knack of doing that. But
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
every now and then there's a picture, whether it's a group outing or a certain event. Um, Especially this time around, time of year like October that just passed. Uh, the pictures from NYCC pop up for me, so it's when we were out and going to the show and doing interviews and checking out the sites, and it's like, oh, I remember that. It was quite an undertaking. It was fun for what it was. I was exhausted after the fact, and boy, I wish I could do that on a regular basis and not just be so damn tired all the time after the fact. But everybody keeps asking, oh, when are you going to go back to NYCC? Oh, when are you going to go back to check out this and that? And I'm like, eventually, like right now, the kids are of a certain age, and once they're a little bit older, maybe, I could leave them with somebody and maybe even like the last day take them with, that kind of thing. But it's one of those things, like I wish I can go back to doing those kind of things. I just don't have the time currently.
Hmm.
When I used to post about my wrestling days and everything else, I would see old posts where I'm promoting a show that's coming up either in the area or probably a few towns over, and trying to get people to come out and support the show, support the event, or just even support us where we're going out and performing. And like I think back to that, I'm like, man, what the fuck was I doing?
Hmm.
Because one of the things that I completely despised for my wrestling days was ticket selling.
Oh yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was that, oh, if you can sell X amount of tickets, we'll put you on a certain spot in the card and this and that. I'm like no, let me just go out there and let me just wrestle. Let me just show you what I can do. I want to be
Hmm.
able to make it on my own physical ability rather than having to be, um, a spokesperson, more or less. Um, and that was always a battle that I had to contend with myself, because I was confident that I could go out there and work with just about anybody, given enough time and preparation. But it always came down to, oh, you only sold X amount of tickets. Well, we're going to put you in this match. Well, fuck you.
Then you realize just how dirty the whole business is. Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. I knew, like, within the first few months of doing it, like, I was just like, fuck, I got to try to do a few things. And yeah, I would, hit up certain people that I knew would come out and would join in, stuff like that. But at the same time, like, when those memories pop up, I'm just like, yeah, I did it. It was fun. It was a point in my life. I can add it to the laundry list of different jobs or titles or things that I've done in my life. And at the very least, I can say I did that. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, it's just a kick in the pants, because every time you sit there and you go back to the old days, you're like, man, that was fun. uh, I do have a segue for this, so we can
Okay.
you know shoot up out of this whole thing. Somebody else who's been saying, oh man, I wish it was like the old days.
Who?
Marvel.
Why
Marvel
they got trouble?
Marvel Studios has been having a lot of trouble lately. Um, and that's because a lot of their films have not been as well received as they have in the past. And
Okay.
I only mention this right now because there was a story that came out recently where they had I don't know if it's an annual retreat, but like all the top brass for the Marvel Studios went away on a little quasi vacation to recharge their batteries and discuss different things. And there's a lot to talk about as far as Marvel right now, because they're having trouble. What the majority of people, or I shouldn't say the majority, I should say the loud majority, or minority in this case, I don't know, whichever one we want to look at it. There's a large segment of the fans that are saying that Marvel Studios is a sinking ship, and before you know it, everything is going to be done and gone. Like we're reaching the end of the Marvel era in movies.
Oh, okay. All right.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, some of the Disney Plus shows. I don't know if you heard the news of the Daredevil Born Again series that's going to be on Disney Plus. They got rid of their writing staff and completely brought in a new group because they're starting from scratch.
Oh wow. Okay.
And there's all these stories that are coming out, and people are saying that, oh, Marvel has to change up what they're doing because the way they were treating their Disney Plus shows, they were very fast and loose. They were not going by what's called the quote unquote TV model, where you had a showrunner and somebody was there to keep everything in line and make sure that everything was running on a schedule and scripts were turned in by a certain time and reworked, whatever the case was. This comes on the heels recently of the new Marvels movie that actually is, I believe, is releasing tonight for the sneak previews and then releases tomorrow everywhere in theaters. And that was that.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
So you've got Brie Larson, and I can't remember the name of the other two actors. I feel like an ass. But so you got Captain Marvel, um, Photon, and the new Ms. Marvel, which is a young Indian girl who was in the Disney Plus series. The three superheroes that are all connected to Captain Marvel are gonna co-star in this big movie. And everybody's saying that, oh, the movie had to go through a bunch of reshoots and it was pretty extensive and it's screwed. It's dead from the word go. And everybody's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, why? There's a loud contingent of people that are opposed to Marvel. There was the whole thing with Martin Scorsese saying that cinema's dead due to the superhero movie genre.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and not the case. So first, let me backtrack for a second and say that reshoots are a regular part of movies. Can they be
Hmm.
troublesome at times? Absolutely. If you understand the production schedule of a movie, there's pre-production, development, actual production, and as they move forward. And then once everything's shot and done, they'll screen it, they'll edit it together, they'll see what they have. If there's certain things that are missing, or if there's certain things that they want to add, they'll schedule reshoots, which can be held depending on everybody's schedule, but that means getting back together at certain locations, certain sets, whatever the case is, and having to recreate certain moments or film new moments to insert at the end for post-production. The way that Kevin Feige from Marvel Studios has done it is he'll go out and they'll capture everything that they want, go back, put it together, see what they have, and say, okay, we need this, this, and this. They'll pick certain elements that they want to add or things that would flesh out the story, which then triggers the reshoots. So the way Kevin Feige has done it, from my understanding, is that he always builds the reshoots into the production schedule. So it's a regular thing for Marvel movies to have reshoots. And it's not that they're having to redo something or change the storyline, whatever the case. I'm sure there are instances of that happening, but it's part of their production schedule to do this. Because for the Marvels, they said they had extensive reshoots, everybody just assumed that the movie was screwed right out the gate. Not the case. They were trying to work through it, but they were starting to realize that maybe that might not be the smartest way to go about it. It can get expensive for reshoots depending on what you're doing. And it also puts a strain on their VFX department, which has been another thing we've talked about recently, where
Hmm.
I believe in the United States, the VFX laborers are now starting to unionize because they've just been overworked, ridiculous deadlines, and now their VFX department overall is starting to get a closer look after Quantumania, She-Hulk. I can't remember what the other one was, but there's been a few instances where the movies have not been as polished as people would expect them to be. Quantumania, I just
Yeah.
found out, apparently was bumped up on the schedule because the Marvels, if I remember correctly, the Marvels was supposed to come out sooner, but it was pushed back production wise. Now, whether that was story, like where it fits in the timeline for everything right now, I don't know exactly how that fits. But Marvels was supposed to come out sooner. They pushed that back with a bunch of other movies. Blade was another movie that was pushed back.
Oh yeah.
That's another story in of itself. But they pushed things back and they moved up Quantumania, which then put the VFX artists and everybody who worked on the movie under a time crunch to make sure that it was all done. So there's a lot of rumors that Quantumania probably wasn't even a fully finished film. Not just from
Okay.
VFX. Story-wise, maybe they didn't have enough time to do the reshoots they wanted, but whatever the case is, if you watch Quantumania, it's an okay film. Not what you would expect from an Ant-Man movie. And they were missing certain qualities that made the first two films fun. So, was Quantumania a sacrificial lamb? Possibly. Should they have done that? No. I mean, they could have easily pushed it back and just say, hey, look, we're not going to release a movie now. I know we spent all this money on advertising and merchandising and all that, but let's just push it back a little bit, push back a little bit, whatever the case is. They could have had time to finish it up, and it would have been great. There have been times where the studio has released something in theaters, and then when they release it on Disney Plus, they'll go back and try to touch something up or change things here and there. WandaVision was very guilty of that. Some of the scenes, after some time of being on streaming, then they would update something or change something, and people caught on and noticed it, and it became news, whatever the case. She-Hulk suffered from half-baked scripts, quote-unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the show itself was kind of hit or miss for a lot of people. It was fun for what it was. It wasn't the best representation for Marvel again, but another example of the way that they've been running things a little fast and loose. Probably not the best way to go about it. There was a story where, for She-Hulk, the transformation from Jennifer Walters into She-Hulk herself didn't happen until the very last episode of the series, which was 8 episodes altogether. They watched that.
Wait.
Yeah. Imagine watching 8 episodes of She-Hulk, and she doesn't Hulk out until the very last episode.
I watched that last winter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure she turned like in the second episode.
She turns in the first episode, but originally, storyline-wise, they wanted to wait until the 8th episode for that.
Oh, now I understand. Okay, I missed that. I'm sorry about that. Okay,
no, that's fine. Yeah,
okay.
No. When they went through the planning phase and then they were in production, they said, she turns when? No, we're not doing that. Let's give the fans what they want. They want their superhero. Let's give her in the first episode. And that was the case. Which, again, it's what prompted the discussion of Daredevil Born Again. Like, what are they doing that things had to get reshuffled, moved around? Because apparently they shot a bunch of scenes under whatever scripts they had initially. But when they were looking at some of the dailies or whatever they had at that point, they said, you know what? It's not really working. Let's start again from scratch and see what we can come up with. Now, keep in mind, this is all, especially including the writer's strike, the actor's strike, which, by the way, the actor's strike apparently might be over at this point, because I believe there's a, what do they refer to it as? It's not a solidified contract yet. They have a tentative contract that the guild has to vote on at this point. But the actor and writer strike all played havoc with everything as well, so that's to be taken into account for the past few months. But with that being said, now certain things can get back to business. Daredevil Born Again, now they can get the writers back on. Now that the actors are cleared, once the vote is put through, they can get back to work as well. And hopefully things will go back on schedule. And Marvel might say, hey, look, maybe we can pull back on some of this. Maybe we don't have to have a Marvel movie twice a year. Like, once a year might be enough.
Yeah, maybe even like once a year, and then like maybe a little TV action, or a standalone special. Like, I think the problem was they were riding a very high wave, an unrealistically high wave for 8 years there, 7 years there. I mean, it took a couple of years before everything got up and rolling, but you figure by about 2012, like, Avengers was the movie. I mean,
yeah,
it's funny to think in a 4-year span, like in 2008, the summer of 2008, the most anticipated movie was The Dark Knight. And It's funny because also around the time, it's like, oh, we're doing Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. And a lot of people were like, did he kick heroin?
Yeah, back then, that was a question, yes.
That was a question, because actually, and a lot of people don't remember this, about 2000, up until, I think about that point, he was back in good graces. But he couldn't even get bonded for films for a while there because he had such a bad history.
Yeah.
Which is so wild to think about now. But yeah, it was at points where I think it was, what's his face? I can't remember what it was. One movie he was working on in like 2005 or 2006 when he was like trying to like get his shit back together. Oh, what's his face paid for the bonding on the film?
Was it
Mel Gibson.
Kiss Bang Bang?
Something like that. It was like a smaller art house movie, and he was like working his way back up.
Okay.
Also around the time when he was getting himself sober and unfucking himself.
Okay.
But it's funny to think about because that was 2008, and you know Iron Man did very well. 2009 we had nothing, and 2010 we had Iron Man 2 and the Edward Norton Hulk movie. But then after that, it's interesting. But then think about in 2012, yeah, we were getting the final piece of the Batman Christopher Nolan trilogy with Dark Knight Rises. But I mean, everybody was also going absolutely buck wild because holy fuck, the Avengers looks insane, and you know the Avengers was huge.
Yeah.
But you know, it's safe to say, and I've been the same way. Like, I actually just had this conversation this past weekend with a friend of ours who lives down in South Jersey, and she was even talking about, she was like, I have absolutely no interest in going to see the Marvels. And she was the one, like, opening night, unless something like it was completely out of her power, opening night, she was there for pretty much all the Marvel movies since going back to like 2011. So it's an interesting indication. And yeah, we the two of us have had this conversation about like, wow, Thor, you know, Love and Thunder was very fucking mediocre.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I was like, I wanted to like that so much because it was directed by Sam Raimi. And I just spent a good chunk of the movie saying, I don't give a fuck about any of this.
No, you're right. There are certain things that had expectations and you were hoping for certain outcome. Again, Multiverse of Madness, they kept saying, oh, it's going to be Marvel's first horror film. I'm like, oh, I'm in. Like, let's do it. I wanted to see that. I wanted to see how they could pull that off. And yeah, there were a few scary moments here and there, Marvel-wise. But like, this is not a horror movie. It's another Marvel entry. And one of the things that I always wanted from the first phase of movies was every movie should be able to stand alone by itself. I don't need all the
Yeah.
interconnectivity. I don't need a cameo from this superhero or that character. If you want to do the bonus scene or the end credit scene, okay, great. Let's do the interconnectivity there. Because then there's that little connective tissue at the very least. First Iron Man movie. Great movie in of itself, stands alone.
Yeah.
Captain America. Great movie. Yeah, there's certain, characters with Howard Stark, Dr. Erskine, who, does the super soldier serum and everything else, the Red Skull. Okay, but for the most part, Captain America, the First Avenger, stands alone. And that's what those movies should be, and that's what they should strive for as a self-contained story. Because otherwise you're like, well, if Spider-Man is fighting, a big bad in New York City, where are the Avengers? Where's Wolverine? Where's Captain America? It leaves that always open to question. The one Spider-Man movie, Far From Home, there's even the one question during the planning stage when they're about to fight one of the big elementals. Where's Thor off-world? Where's Captain Marvel? Marvel, she's doing something in outer space. So they, at the very least, in that movie, kind of explained it away a little bit. But you need the stories to stand on their own. Now,
Yeah.
for the Marvels, I'm looking forward to it. Apparently, there's some mid-credit scene that everybody's been talking about. So whatever that sets up going forward, I don't want to spoil it for myself, so I'm not going to spoil it for anybody else as well. But I want to find out what that is. The Marvels is a hour and a half, roughly, which is a short runtime compared to some of the other Marvel movies out there.
Yeah. Holy shit. Okay.
But from everything that I heard, it's fast-paced, it's fun, and it's lighthearted. So it's not as, doom and gloom as some of the other ones have been recently, where it's like, oh, the multiverse is going to be destroyed if we don't stop them. Whatever the case is. There's always got to be the high stakes and the big bad, and you have to take them down with it. That's a superhero movie. You have to triumph over some evil to save the day. That's formulaic, let's face it.
Yeah.
What I want to see is a fun film. And when I saw the trailer for the Marvels and they used Beastie Boys Sabotage, I'm like, oh, this has got me amped already. This looks good. The song was fun. let's go. And then recently, in the final trailer that they released, they played up the nostalgia factor, which will bring me to another point in a second. But they showed images of Chris Evans's Captain America. They showed Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, and you're like, oh, okay, like we're going back to where this came from. They showed images of Thanos during Endgame and everything else. Like, oh, okay, they're playing up the legacy of the story that they've set up to a certain point at the now in this point of the timeline of the films, which makes sense. You want to build off of what came before. Gotcha. But let's not do that at the expense of the characters that you're trying to build up in this film. Like, you can't have Captain America show up and save the day. That kind of like undercuts Captain Marvel at that point. Like, all right, then why the fuck did we need Captain Marvel? You can't have the superhero come in and just say fuck all to the rest of the movie. You just needed Captain America to save the day. That's not going to be the case. Marvel Studios at this point, they have not confirmed this. At least Kevin Feige has not confirmed it. But the rumor going around right now is, with Secret Wars coming back, or I should say Secret Wars coming up, they might be bringing back certain actors to play their roles again. Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., among many others. Because the rumor is, whatever they have set up for Secret Wars and, the Kang Dynasty and other stuff like that, the rumor going around right now is that they might do another Avengers movie with the original team.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the idea is the newer characters since Endgame have been kind of hit or miss.
Oh, yeah.
People aren't liking him as much. They're not getting the same reception. Let's face it, they did a great job building up that first few phases, only for Endgame to come and go, and people are like, all right, what's next? And then we have these new characters that are trying to be integrated into the storyline, but people aren't as accepting just yet. We have a new Captain America in Sam Wilson. Anthony Mackie is playing it. Some people are like, oh, yeah, I wish Chris Evans would come back. Okay. We had Ironheart introduced in Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever. And people are like, oh, is this supposed to be the new Iron Man? I don't really buy it. I just want Robert Downey Jr. back. Stuff like that. People want Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow back. People want Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye. And that might happen. But Feige himself is saying, oh, that's not been talked about. It was never discussed at the retreat. So that is an interesting point, though. So we'll see what happens from here.
Okay.
It could be complete, smoke screen just to say, no, we can either confirm nor deny, whatever the case is. It would be cool to have another original Avengers team story told on the big screen. Have to see how it plays out. Again, Secret Wars might have some of that as well, especially if they do some shenanigans with the timeline again. We've already had time travel introduced in Endgame and Infinity War. Supposedly the ending of Loki season 2, I have not seen the final episode. That's another thing that came out tonight, actually. The final episode for season 2 culminates and supposedly has more to do with time and space and the multiverse. So I have to see how that plays out, because again, they introduced the character of Victor Timely, which was an offshoot or another Kang variant. So if anybody's getting lost in all this, trust me, it's a lot to take in with the way that Marvel's been writing their stories recently. That also brings me to the other problem that Marvel's facing right now with Jonathan Majors, who plays Kang. He showed up in Loki season 1 as He Who Remains. He shows up as Kang in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania. He shows up again in season 2 of Loki. And the question is, are they going to continue to use him going forward? Because Jonathan Majors himself had some legal troubles recently, and later this month will be going to court. And whether he's found guilty or not, it looks like Marvel might have to make a decision whether they want to hold on to him, because he got into a domestic abuse. Was it? No, he was with a girlfriend. Is it still domestic abuse if it's a girlfriend? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's still domestic abuse.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if the labeling changed or not. But he got into an argument, a physical altercation with a lady he was seeing, and that story broke, many months back. Marvel didn't make any quick reactions then. They're pretty much just waiting and seeing what was going to happen. But the story came out. Do we want to keep going with Kang, or do we pivot? And at the time, they were saying that we can leave the whole Kang story and shift over to a Doctor Doom story.
Ah, okay.
That would be kind of cool, and I would love to see Doctor Doom on the big screen done correctly at this point, because we've had two other iterations, which were meh. See the Fantastic Four movies, the original ones, and then the weird reboot that was done. We could get a proper Victor Von Doom, but that wasn't exactly what they were going for just yet. So for now, as far as everybody knows, they're sticking to their story and their timeline of movies, and we're still going to have the Kang Dynasty. Nothing has changed there. Could they swap out actors? They keep referring to Terrence Howard and Don Cheadle. Something happens, negotiations fall through, then we just get a new actor to play Kang. I mean...
Oh, yeah, I forgot they've had two Captain Rhodes.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, I mean, can they do that? Yes. Is it going to be a little bit jarring? Absolutely. But there's nothing set in stone saying that the variants have to all look the same. You could have a different Kang in a different world, whatever the case is. But all this is to say, Marvel is probably pretty nostalgic for saying, hey, remember when we were on top of the world? Remember when everybody was anticipating all the Avengers movies? And we delivered big movies. The Russo brothers gave between, let's see, Infinity War, Endgame. I believe they also did Civil War.
Captain America. That was their test run. Yeah, Civil War.
Civil War was kind of like Avengers 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
But they said they're gone for the time being, but if they would come back to do something if it involves Secret Wars. So being that Secret Wars is out there, they haven't announced the Russo brothers yet, they should probably bring back the same writers for those 3 films, because they also delivered very big. I mean, you can definitely say that you had a working formula for a while, but to have them work constantly at that level, I mean, there's going to be some burnout happening, and you're going to have some diminishing returns after a while. But let's go back for a second and say, you had Infinity War, then whatever time passed, then you had Endgame. Wouldn't it have been better if they said, you know what, we're going to put the brakes on releases for 1 year, 2 years, maybe even 3. Work on things quietly. And then let's say 2 years pass and they announce, here's the next Captain America movie, or here's the next Spider-Man movie, and then start the ball rolling again. But they had that time to build into it, rather than saying, we're going to keep the ball rolling, we're printing money, let's have fun, merchandising, fuck yeah. Slow it down.
Well, it's actually kind of an odd, it's an interesting kind of framing of the whole thing too, because if you think about it, whatchamacallit, Endgame came out April, May of 2019, and less than a year later is when the pandemic hit, and that really put the brakes on everything at that point, because they did Endgame, then they did Spider-Man Far From Home, and then they kind of took a pause for a while, and they said, we'll start this up next year. And then, as you remember, like, they basically just said, we're just when the pandemic hit, they're just like, put the brakes on everything and just stop. And then it was later that year, late in the 2020, is when they started with the TV show stuff. So yeah, I mean, to me, there was always that strong line of delineation between them that really kind of separated it from like the first generation to the new era of the whole thing. And it was always it was interesting to me, because that was one of the things that really made the difference of of how the entire thing felt. Like, I remember being excited. It's like, oh, cool, we're going to get another Avengers movie. Or it's like, oh, how are they going to do the Civil War in a movie? I've read a little bit about that. That's interesting. But yeah, then after that, it just became, everything changed with the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I found myself struggling to care. And it wasn't just because some of the quality kind of went off. It was that I was like, we're going through a fucking pandemic. You know, I don't give a shit. I've got I've got so many other fucking problems lined up that this is not doing anything for me in any form of escapism.
Yeah.
You know, and I hate to think of it that way, but it really, really fucking did a number on the whole thing too. You know, and especially because, you know, the instinct we all had for a while there was like, okay, just bury yourself in video games and books and movies and whatever else because you can't go anywhere. And it just changed everything, man. I don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, Disney Plus at the time was supposed to be an excuse to pump out more content.
Hmm.
And if I'm gonna paraphrase Bob Iger before he quote unquote left or retired from that position, only to be brought back years later. But he said with the launch of Disney Plus, just go for it. He said, you know, stock it with content, put it out there.
Hmm.
And you know, when WandaVision came out, when all those shows were being released, the idea was, yeah, people are home. Let's give them something to watch. Let's give them something to be distracted with. And it worked for a little bit. For some other people, as yourself, not so much, because there's only so much you could do to try to forget what was going on in the real world. That, yeah, like after a while, it's just like it didn't hold people's attention. And then when the pandemic did start to slow down and things start reopening, people weren't watching it as much. It wasn't getting as much
Hmm.
views or ratings, whatever the case was. Willow, they did the series on that one to follow up from the movie from years ago. Willow was removed from streaming. They canceled the series and they said, "Screw it, we're not going to even leave it on the platform. We're just going to take it off."
Really?
Oh yeah, a lot of people are
Oh, wow.
pissed, especially Warwick Davis himself. He said, "Well, that sucks. Like, we worked really hard on that, and now nobody can watch it."
Hmm.
So, that's another problem with digital and streaming platforms. Like, they literally can leave it as long as they want. They can change it if they want. They could cut things out or add things in depending, or in this case, remove it entirely. And people are like, okay, well, what about the fans for Willow? Like, I was never a big Willow fan. I remember watching the movie growing up. It really didn't strike a chord with me, but I knew of it and I wanted to watch the series. But before
Yeah.
I can get around to it, it was canceled. So I was like, all right, you know, maybe I don't have to get to it as quickly. And then they're like, oh, we're taking it off the platform. I'm like, well, fuck. I can't even watch it now. The same thing happened with DC and when they were trying to do their DC Universe app. And they did what was it? They did Teen Titans and they did Doom Patrol. And then in between there, they also did Swamp Thing, which from what I heard was pretty damn amazing. But because of the changing of guard over at DC and everything else that was going on, the DC Universe app went away. Everything that was on the DC platform got merged with HBO because of the merger between Warner Brothers and Discovery, whatever the case was, and it just became this whole big like meh.
Hmm.
And in the transition over, not only did they cancel Swamp Thing the series because apparently it was just far too expensive to store the sets, whatever that entailed, I don't know exactly, but it was extensive enough that the storage fees were just too high for them. They said we're going to cut our losses, but then I can't even find the Swamp Thing series, which is
Jeez.
pretty sad because I've always been a fan of Swamp Thing, and I was like, oh, that new series sounds really good. And again, because I didn't have the time to catch it when it was available, I'm like, fuck, now it's gone. What about the people who are fans that want to see that? The fans that are clamoring for that content. So, I mean, you're right. To go back to your point about the whole pandemic, yeah. After a bit, like, there's only so much you can watch. There's only so much you could read. There's only so many games you can play before you're just like, I really don't care anymore.
Hmm.
How do you hold people's attention when they're considering that their lives that they knew, again, the day to day, was decimated? You know, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. It wasn't that. Let's face it. I mean, it just became this big period in time that just it's all blurred now. We've talked about it before. Anything that happened during COVID seems like so far away. It's only been a couple of years, but it seems further away because of the way that time progressed around all that. You didn't have your work schedule. You didn't have social outings. All that stuff was like disrupted, and there's only so much you can do to distract yourself in that time. Disney was trying to change it up again. Black Widow was the movie that came out day and date release. So came out in theaters and you could watch it on streaming. I remember because we went over to my father-in-law's. He was nice enough to let us use his little, home theater in his basement. It was fantastic. We watched it. We enjoyed it. But man, did I feel bad for Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
You finally get your standalone action hero movie after being in the Avengers and being part of an ensemble cast and always being, a cameo or a co-star, whatever the case was. Here's your time to shine. And they said, fuck you, you're going to be a sacrificial lamb during the pandemic. Thank you for playing.
Yep.
Which triggered the lawsuits and everything else, and people saying, what about my bonuses and the certain milestones, blah, blah, blah. All that, for it to be settled out of court. Thankfully. Because I don't think we needed to get into more of the financials and everything else that was going on in the courtroom for that. But yeah, now, after the fact, they were trying to pick up again where they left off. And they're like, oh, let's keep cranking out movies. Let's keep cranking out series. And let's just do all this stuff. And for a while, people were just like, okay. Like, there comes a point in time where it's not special anymore. These superhero movies were events at one point. You talk about the Hulk and Iron Man, the first Avengers movies. Like, these were reasons to go to the theater and leave your home. But now there's a lot of people who are talking about it. And let's also mention the fact that there's a large contingent of people out there that dislike this Marvel movie in particular, the Marvels, because it's a female-led cast. All right.
Okay.
Review bombing and everything else is going to be a thing. You're going to hear stories, people saying, oh, the movie sucks. They have never watched it. They've even, watched more than 2 minutes of it, or maybe not even watched the trailer. But they're going to say, oh, this movie sucks. Did you watch it? No, I didn't watch it. But then how do you know it sucks? Oh, it's going to suck. Just trust me. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a good review to go off of.
Well, it's also people who are looking for, it's like, oh, I got to have my hot take and get it up on my YouTube channel and on Twitter and my Facebook, so I get interactions and watches and clicks and all that kind of shit.
Exactly. I'm excited for the movie. I still want to see it. I enjoyed. In fact, I have it on the background now. Captain Marvel's playing in the background as we're recording. Captain Marvel movie was fun because they did the whole 90s nostalgia for when she, landed on Earth and everything else started for her from there. That I want to see the progression of the character's story. And yeah, I mean, I wish we'd have gotten some of these stories sooner. It would have been fun to see some of the other Marvel characters play into it maybe. But again, if they can make the standalone film work, then it could fit into the rest of the different storyline in chapter form, I guess you can say. But there's going to be the people who are going to be against Marvel. You have the people who are against against superhero movies as a whole, because everybody's saying, oh, superhero fatigue, it's an actual thing. Okay. I can see what you're saying. Like, after so many films, people get kind of tired of it. I see that. Okay. There's the camp that says that all superhero movies have destroyed cinema. That's a different argument altogether. But it's simple as, if you want to see it, go buy your ticket. Check it out. If you don't want to see
exactly.
it, no, nobody's putting a gun to your head and saying you have to watch the Marvels. Make your choice. And we'll see what happens. All the different box offices have been trending down. They're not the big tent poles that they used to be. And let's face it, the Marvels is coming out in November anyway, so it's not like it's a summer blockbuster. It's not even summer. There are certain expectations at this point. Movie theaters have changed. We've talked about prices going up for a bunch of different things. The price of taking a family out for a movie theater adventure, kind of high at this point. I even told Jen earlier, she's like, oh, when do you want to go watch the Marvels? I'm like, well, I kind of want to go watch it tonight, but I have to record, and I don't know if it makes sense to go pay full price for a ticket right now because the way everything else is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll wait till, half price night and go check it out. We'll see. That's not to say I don't believe in the movie. It's just that my wallet could take a breather for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But the way that Marvel Studios right now is trying to figure it all out, how they're going to play this out, how they're going to change things up, are they going to make changes to the lineup as far as films? Are they going to make more release date changes? We'll have to wait and see. Again, the writer's strike and the actor's strike did play into a bunch of different factors right now. Certain things had to start, certain things had to stop, whatever the case was. Deadpool 3, they were still filming during the writer's strike. They could only use what was written at that point, and they could not deviate from the script. Then the actor's strike hit, and then they couldn't even film. So that production is going to pick up again. I'm sure you're going to hear about reshoots for that one, especially because, let's face it, it's going to be Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. I'm sure they're going to want to improv and do some lines and have some shenanigans on screen, which will be to the benefit of the fans. But all this stuff is going to change and, evolve until it finally makes it to the final product. Again, we were talking about it recently in one of the shows. Whatever the first draft for a film or story is, rarely does it ever survive the process to the end when it's finally released. Does it resemble that first draft? Things change so much throughout the production schedule that there's a second draft, a third draft, God forbid, third and fourth. Whatever the case is, they make changes to it. And then when they're filming, they make more changes to it. And then it's an ever-evolving project until it finally gets to the end. So many different people involved. Writers, actors, producers, editors, and then you talk about, costuming, hair, makeup, all that stuff. All those things come together. And for all that to work and actually get a final finished product, do yourself a favor. When a movie finishes, sit and read every single name that's on those credits lists and realize that all those people had a hand in making the film. Now, take half of those names. So let's say there's 1,000 names in the credits. Get 500 people in a room and try to make them work all on the same project and get something done.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So for it to come to that point, it's amazing that anything gets done in Hollywood to begin with, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always going to be people saying, oh, it's going to suck. Oh, this is going to be horrible, blah, blah, blah. Just watch it. I know I've mentioned this before. When the Twilight films came out, Vampire Sparkle. I only can say that because that was the running joke for everybody. Have I ever watched a Twilight movie? No. Because of it, I have nothing to say of it, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
If I watch one, then I'll have an opinion. I can say, oh, that movie sucked, or oh, that was actually pretty good. I have nothing to say along those lines for those movies. The Marvel movies, I will watch them, I will enjoy them, and if they're bad, I'll say it. Thor Ragnarok, I wish it was better. It had potential. The third Guardians movie. Not Ragnarok, sorry. Love and Thunder. Yes, you're right. Ragnarok was fun.
Yeah, Ragnarok was awesome, yeah.
The third Guardians movie. Everybody loves it because that's the trilogy of Guardians movies. I actually didn't like it as much.
Me neither.
I was like, I can see the spectacle and everything else and the soundtrack. Okay, I get it. James Gunn worked his magic. But for me, the payoff wasn't as good as I was hoping it was going to be. So, I think out of all the newer movies that have come out, with the exception of Ragnarok, Shang-Chi might be my favorite one out of the newer characters that they've introduced into the storylines.
Mm-hmm.
Still, to this day, one of my favorite opening when he talks about his mother and his father, how they met and how, they do the kung fu scene and they're fighting back and forth. And it's really just like a form of flirtation through physical action as fighting. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Like, that's such a beautiful story that's told in the very beginning of how his mother and father met. And then you go into the story of the Mandarin and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and then, Shang-Chi himself Like all that. That's, I mean, yes, it's formulaic. Don't get me wrong. But for the newer characters that they've introduced, probably one of the ones that I love the most so far, and I wish they would have brought him back already. But the way things are playing out right now, it's a little bit different. See what happens. All this to say, Marvel's trying to figure it out. After this
Hmm.
annual retreat that they do to recharge their batteries, hopefully they get back to the offices. Hopefully they figure things out. Whether they make changes remains to be seen. But I'm still on board to see what happens. When I was a kid, I would have killed to see these movies. The fact that I'm an adult and I can afford to go watch these films and enjoy them for what they're worth, I don't have superhero fatigue. Give me Marvel movies. Give me good DC movies. I'm still waiting for some of those.
Yep.
But nostalgia gets us all, and I'm sure Marvel is like, maybe we can get back to our winning ways when we had big box offices. That might not be the case. We might not see a big movie again for quite some time as far as Marvel's concerned. Yeah, we had Barbie that killed at the box office. That's not a Marvel movie. It's a completely different film. But
Hmm.
who knows? Maybe it'll be another Avatar in a few years because James Cameron's still filming those or still editing them, depending on how you look at it. But we'll see. So,
Yeah.
and I think I've talked long enough, and I'm looking down right now.
Yep.
We've gone pretty long tonight already. How do you feel so far?
I'm exhausted.
No, I know. You started off that way. I get it. But I think we'll stop there for tonight, and hopefully we'll get some more information going on. I wanted to talk more about the Blade movie, but that can be another conversation entirely. We'll see how that turns out. So, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez,
I'm Doug.
and we are the Rabblecast.